We got some in-game auto clickers, and we also got a big nerf to automation. Hello there, Ray here, and Java Edition finally got to the new features, which is going to be for the next update called the third Minecraft drop of the year. So leave a like on the video and let's get into the good and bad news. Java Edition got auto attacking. This is really crazy, but if you go into the controls, we now have a attack/destroy setting here. Normally it's set to hold, so we can change this from hold to toggle. If we just push the attack button, so the left mouse button, the player is automatically going to attack or destroy them. So if I just aim towards a block here, look at that, it's automatically destroying it. This means you can automatically break blocks in Java Edition without holding down any mouse buttons and without using the weird F3 plus T trick where you hold down a mouse button then press F3 plus T, and then the game would think you're holding down that button continuously and you keep breaking stuff. But now they brought this as an actual feature into Java Edition, which is really nice because I know the F3 T trick works differently depending if you're playing on like Windows or Mac, and sometimes it would work if you just like hold down your mouse button and then unplug your mouse. Now it's also called attack, so you would expect that if you would turn this on, your player would automatically attack either the block they're looking at or the entity that they're looking at. But it doesn't seem to be working with entities at the moment, because like I can make it break blocks, but if I'm aiming at the entity, it's not automatically attacking it. Now this is something I've wanted for a really long time, because Bedrock Edition has it so that if you would like hold down a button, it will automatically attack every so many seconds. And they were going to bring this with the combat update, but the combat update never came out and they actually stopped working on it. But I wanted this because when you're attacking things, you have to constantly swing, and over time that is a lot of clicking, which is not good for your hands. And I know a lot of people that used to do PvP in Minecraft actually got carpal tunnel just by clicking in Minecraft, so tons of repetitive motion is not a good thing. But you can use auto clickers at the moment, but the only thing is they are a third-party program, so it would be nice if they have a way to do it within the game. And it seems like we're getting there. The only thing is it doesn't currently actually work. So hopefully we get this, but it's not gonna be like a super fast clicking, so you're still using auto clicker for other stuff. It should be like kind of a slower clicker, just like how Bedrock Edition has it. This will be really nice for a lot of my advanced farms, as the player needs to be in there holding down certain things to break certain blocks or activate certain things. Speaking of that, if you go back to the settings, we can see across from the attacked one, we also have a use one. So this one's your left mouse button normally, where this one is usually your right mouse button. This allows you to place down blocks or use different things that are in your hand. So if we set this one to toggle, let's try out the auto use feature. If we hover over a block and then tap right click one time, you can see it's automatically placing blocks. Not placing them in like super duper fast, but it is pretty good speed. And let's use another tool that has a use function, which is the shovel. Use will turn grass blocks into path blocks. You can see, yeah, it works really fast, which is nice. Once again, this will be super helpful in preventing people from getting like carpal tunnel from constantly holding down buttons on their mouse. I actually play on a controller, as a lot of you guys know, even here in Java Edition, just because it's more ergonomical. But this will also be really nice for my automatic farms where you have to hold down stuff, such as like in my dirt farm, where we use azaleas to convert stone into moss into rooted dirt, and then that has to get hoed in order to turn to normal dirt, which you can turn into mud, which you can then turn into clay, and then hardened clay, and then terracotta clay, which is a pretty cool process, but does mean you have to be AFKing there, converting the different types of blocks. So I'm really excited to implement this into all my different farms. By the way, if you guys haven't seen my spreadsheet, how I'm farming every single item in the game of Minecraft, check that out. It's always in the description of my videos. Also in controls, there's mouse settings where you can invert the X and Y. So that means when you push upwards, like on your controller, you're actually going downwards. I guess the same thing for your mouse. And then like right and left would be the opposite as well, because some people get used to the opposite. I know in some games I have to invert this to make sense. But we also got a sprint setting, which allows you to decide how fast you have to tap the forward button before it will turn into sprint. And this is done in game ticks. So if you set to 10, that means within 10 game ticks or half a second of tapping W twice, will still make it sprint for you. For setting to a really low number, like 1, will mean you have to tap super fast in order to sprint, or you can turn it off, meaning that it doesn't matter how fast you tap W, you will never sprint, which could be nice for people doing like speed bridging and trying to get to the edge of something without actually sprinting. But if you know another use for this, let me know. It's a sad day today as they remove spawn chunks from the game of Minecraft. These were the columned areas that were around the initial spot that you were placed into when you were first joining the game. And in the past, it used to load a really big area as entity processing, meaning that entities can move around this area no matter where the player was in the world. But then they later shrunk it from this big all the way down to just this smaller green area, these 9 ones. But the cool thing is since these were always loaded, you can place all these different crazy farms into it. I think there's like around 35 different farms that I designed just to go inside of spawn chunks, as they all can run without a player. If you guys want to see those, I'll put those down in the description. But the problem is that these chunks always did create a bit of lag, as the game had to always keep them loaded, which did pull memory as well as performance away from the player wherever they were in the game. And because the game no longer needs these to be loaded in order to perform different tasks, there's really no reason for them to have spawn chunks, other than that players do really cool things like building farms inside them where they can run 24/7 on servers even without players online. But now they're saying, since they got stuff like the Ender Pearl chunk loading as well as the Portal chunk loading, which I explained how you guys can do those in these videos here, they're saying that with those features, they don't really need spawn chunks, because if people wanted to make spawn chunks, they could just come in here and place in a chunk loader. Now, spawn chunks would automatically load these chunks immediately upon the server starting up or a player joining in the world. But now to do this similar thing, we got a couple options. We have the force load command, which is a creative only thing, but you can force load any type of chunk that you want. We also got the chunk loading that uses portals with entities going one way or the other way. And a simple setup like this will work for most people. But the downside to loading chunks with this is that not only you're loading the overworld, but you're also loading the nether, which was not the case when it came to spawn chunks. Now, the other option being the pearls that are suspended. This will only load stuff if the player who owns a pearl is logged into the world. Now, this isn't really a problem in single player, because when you leave, the whole world shuts off anyways. But in multiplayer, this is a problem, because if you log off the world, then all of a sudden your spawn chunks are going to unload. So it's also not the same as like the old spawn chunks. The fourth option is just having a player online, because players as they walk around will load the chunks around them. And the fifth option is chunks required to assign the global world spawn. And this only happens when the world loads. This is what's going on in this image here, but we also got a new loading little bar at the top here. And these loaded in chunks here are actually the ones that are going to be around the player and are unrelated to the spawn chunks. But this used to show the spawn chunks being loaded in. And this loading image would actually change depending on what was being loaded in the world. Like if a village was being loaded in the world, it would look a little bit differently. And this was actually used by speedrunners to know where villages were. But during this part, this is when they start loading in the chunks. But other than that, there's no other method of loading chunks. But this change also means that these different types of chunk loading will immediately load upon the server, which fixes any problems related to chunk loaders not loading when you load the world. So if you have a bunch of farms in your spawn chunks, you'll just have to come in with one of these types of chunk loaders and load them when it comes to these future versions. Let me know what you think of this change. Another big change is actually the F3 menu. Look how much less there is on it when you press F3. And you can now access the F3 menu no matter where you are within the Minecraft game, so I can even open it up on the menu here. Now, they made it smaller so that it wouldn't cover so much of your screen by default, but you can add in the previous information by pressing F3 plus F5 at the same time. And this will bring up a menu which contains a bunch of options where you can turn on and off a whole bunch of things that are related to the F3 menu. So for biome, now if we click in F3, it'll add the biome. It's right up here in the top left. And then if we click always, I think that means it's always going to pop up. So let me see. Yeah, if I remove the F3 menu, it's always sitting there at the top of the screen, which is really nice. That means you can be like flying through the world. Let's say you're trying to gather all the different types of biomes, and you can easily see which one you're going through without having all the rest of the F3 stuff in front of your face. And you can do this for any of the different things, which is really nice. This is gonna be pretty nice. You can even search for different things. And there's also profiles. So there's the default profile, which resets everything to the default state. And there's also a performance profile, which will just display the FPS in the top left. And this is because when you normally open up your F3, the actual opening it up in the game trying to collect all this information, update it every single game tick, was lowering down your frames compared to having it closed. And you can see this actually where my frames are going up when I close the F3 menu. I really like this feature because I know when I'm doing different stuff and trying to show off different things, there's just too much stuff that covers up the rest of the screen for you guys to understand what's going on. This is definitely the quality of life updates that people are looking for when it comes to new versions of Minecraft. But let me know what you think of this. They also improved the rendering of entities within the game, so you guys should notice a smoother gameplay when around a whole bunch of different entities. But it says this won't actually increase your frames per second because most of the lag doesn't come from the actual entities, but other things like playing on high render distance. Now they said this was a big change, and I already do notice the change because in this area here there is a few entities and it can drop your frames a bit, but it's actually doing really well. They said that it might cause some visual bugs related to entities, but they will eventually fix those. We got some new horse armor. It is the copper version of it, and it provides 4 armor for the horse, which if we compare this to the leather one, which only gives 3, and the iron one, which gives 5, so it's right between leather and iron. And it has the same loot table chance of generating as iron horse armor, where you can find it in monster rooms, desert pyramids, end cities, jungle pyramids, nether fortresses, strongholds, and villages. So you cannot craft it, but it does look really shiny on horses, similar to the diamond armor. What other questions you guys have about the copper horse armor, as I will be answering them in a future video. The next new item that we got is these copper lightning rods. We had the normal copper lightning rod. You can get these by crafting a normal lightning rod with the 3 copper ingots, and then just setting this as a block. It will slowly oxidize over time, which will get you the exposed lightning rod, and then you can get the weathered one, and then even the oxidized one when it's completely oxidized. And just like the other copper things, you can wax that at any point, so we'll keep that level and won't get any more oxidized. But it seems that the oxidized lightning rod doesn't actually get cleaned off when they get struck by lightning, which might be intentional. Otherwise it would be really hard in order to actually get this block, because every time it gets struck by lightning it would get some levels removed and would end up being clean again. Or they just haven't added the feature in yet, because they also haven't added it so that it cleans off the nearby copper golem statue, which is in Bedrock Edition. Do you think they should make this a super hard item to get? Java Edition also got the copper armor as well as tools, which can be crafted with copper ingots. The armor has more durability than leather and gold. It won't get as nice enchantments as if you used iron armor. The weapons and tool do the same amount of damage as stone, but they have higher durability, so they'll last longer. The tools also last longer and work faster than cobble tools, but iron stuff is still better. And when enchanting these, it will provide better enchantments than diamond, but not as good as iron. And like other tools and armor, they can be repaired using the ingots. You can also craft the ingots down into the copper nuggets. A lot of people ask, how in the world does copper nuggets come into play? And it's actually when you smelt down any of the tools or armor, which you can find this armor on mobs like zombies. And after smelted, they will produce 1 nugget, similar to like gold nuggets. We also got the new copper golems in Java Edition, which you can build like other golems with any type of copper block being on bottom and then a carved pumpkin on top. This will produce the associated type of copper golem as well as a copper chest underneath. Otherwise, you can craft the clean version of the copper chest, or you can just wait for the chest to slowly oxidize over time. And they have the cool sorting ability where they'll search copper chests looking for items. Then they'll take up to 16 of the item, and then they'll put it into a chest that is either empty or one that already has a similar item in it. You can see the way they hold their item is really strange compared to Bedrock Edition. I don't think this is intended. They'll probably fix this. But now that we have these guys inside of Java Edition, we got to do F3+B and see their hitboxes. And you can see these guys are looks like the size of an entire block, so they're quite large. This is probably actually a good thing because we're going to use these guys inside of storage systems, because we don't want these guys to get like stuck inside of like wiring and stuff. We don't want them to escape from trying to sort our stuff automatically. And if you haven't already seen my little video on my new automatic sorter system that uses redstone in order to get way more use out of each golem, now that we have these in Java Edition, I will be updating this to the Java Edition and getting it working here just like in Bedrock Edition. And it should be able to sort 1/3 of all the items in the game of Minecraft just starting with a single chest. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on that future video. And when they do the searching, it's similar to Bedrock Edition, where they will search out 32 blocks from their position horizontally and up to 8 blocks vertically. And then they'll visit at most 10 chests, and then after searching 10 of them, they'll take a 7-second break before continuing to search more chests. But unlike Bedrock Edition, after crafting these guys, they would normally freeze in Bedrock Edition after a few seconds. And I've had some of these guys running for over a half hour and they haven't froze yet. So they either haven't implemented that part of them freezing, or you just have to run them longer before they freeze. You can stop them from freezing altogether just by putting wax on them, so they'll never freeze and therefore they'll never stop working in your little storage system. Now in Java Edition, if we would just interact with these guys using our empty hand, we can make them drop the item that they're holding. So they got the copper ingots out of this guy's hand. That's kind of nice because sometimes they will not find a chest to put their stuff in, and you wouldn't be able to pull their item out of their hand unless you put down another new empty chest for them to put it into. But I do wish they would have an automatic way of us pulling items out of their hands. What do you guys think? And you do have to wait for these guys to oxidize in order to get the statues, as you cannot craft them. But I did make a farm. If you guys haven't watched the video already, I'll put it down in the description. But it lets you get all the different statues while being AFK. And the statues can be placed down as blocks and be clicked on to change their position. And there's 4 different poses, which also put off 4 different redstone signals from 1 all the way up to 4, which could be great for making like a combination door where you have to change the look of the statue in order to actually open the door. And like all the other copper stuff, you can decide to wax as well as remove wax off of them, as well as if you use axe on them, you can remove the layers, and then if you get to the last layer and clean them off, they come back to life, which is pretty cool. Java also got the shelf block, which is made out of stripped logs of any type. And now we can actually see what happens when we turn on hitboxes in Java Edition. It turns out these guys don't show up as entities when placed inside of the new shelf block, which is different compared to the old item frames. Remember the item frames where the item inside of it was a different entity, and then the item frame was a different entity as well? But they eventually changed that to reduce lag. It looks like they changed this too, but hopefully it doesn't create very much lag, as we just got a block here instead of having an entity. Because if you have a whole bunch of these, like you're using these to actually show the different items inside of your chest, you don't want to end up lagging out your storage system. But at the same time, now you can still illustrate like what's inside. If you have like 3 chests stacked on top of each other, and then like the first item represents what's in the first one, second one goes to the second, and third goes to third. Could be a cool way to visualize it without having like item frames or signs. And when it comes to pushing and pulling the shelf, you cannot do it, nor can you do it with the new statue in Java Edition. And shelves have a redstone function, so if you power them and then you would come in here and right click anywhere on the shelf, it's going to switch out all the items that you see on the shelf with the items that are in your inventory, starting from the right hand side and moving to the left. So if you have 1 shelf, it's just going to remove and replace 3 items. If you have 2, it's going to do up to 6. And then if you have a total of 9 of the same shelves in a row and they're all powered, then they're going to do all 9 items, which is really nice when you're switching out different activities, doing something different. You can easily come in here and swap out your gear, but I don't think it's going to solve the whole inventory management problem that we've been having for years. But what do you think? We also got the new dyes that were first shown in Bedrock Edition. Look at these things. So the reason they said they did this is to make it so it's easy to distinguish the different types of dyes for people that have different types of color blindness. So not every single dye is in one of these like little cup things, and the actual dyes that are on top are unique shapes. Now I do actually like this change just because some of the dyes looked a little bit too similar to some other items in the game Minecraft, and if I would be like scrolling through trying to grab a dye, sometimes I end up grabbing something else, but the way you get them and everything else related to them is the same. They fixed this nasty bug when it comes to lava cauldrons. If you would happen to touch the inside of the cauldron from underneath, you would actually catch fire from the lava, which was not intended. And this broke the chicken farm that I showed, where you have the grindstone with the lava cauldron above. As these chicks, if they get hit by another egg, they get shoved upwards. And even though they weren't technically touching the lava inside of this, they were still up here where the feet was, and therefore it would set them on fire and kill them. And it just happened that right after I made this video, it came out with the full release, which had this problem. So this farm was broken for a couple versions, but it'll now work once again. Getting hit from behind by somebody with an axe will no longer disable your shield, but instead will only happen if they are in front of you. Strongholds will no longer avoid generating inside of cherry groves, where before these biomes were accidentally on the list of things they should avoid. This list is typically made so that they will not generate underneath of large bodies of water. Now if you ever try to respawn the dragon, you know that the dragon respawn noise is really loud, and it doesn't matter if you turn down all these other noises that are in the entire game, this will not actually help you reduce the loudness of the dragon respawn. And only actually by turning down the master volume will you actually get this to be a bit quieter. And apparently 2 years ago I made this bug report actually complaining about this, and they actually fixed it today, which is really cool. And the same problem would occur with the thunder. No matter how low you put your weather audio, it would still be really loud. Now it's been changed to actually scale with the slider. So now I no longer have to keep my weather completely off because it was so loud. I could probably actually keep it on now. And now if you choose to watch the end credits, you no longer have to worry about getting idled and kicked from the server. There is a vanilla setting on servers that allows you to set an idle time. So if you're not active after a certain amount of time, you will automatically be kicked. And this was applying to the end credits so that you never actually be able to see the end of it because they'd kick you from the server. Book and quills will now operate very similar to like Word documents. spawning hostile mobs while on peaceful mode would make them still appear for 1 game tick. So now spawn eggs will have a special message saying disabled in peaceful mode. You can now use data packs to modify the items that come off of armadillos, glowberries, bee nest, cheering pumpkins, and what things will drop if they're blown up with a charged creeper. Now join me in playing around with all these new features over at my testing server, and you guys get your very own server by using the link down in the description or using code RAY, as you can even get 25% off. All thanks to Bisect Hosting, who make running your own servers very, very easy. And I'll see all you guys over at my Twitch stream. Bye bye!